Welcome. Thanks for jumping in and joining me for another month. Welcome to the month of May, and I can't believe it. I can't remember how many videos I've released, but I'm so happy to be here and another one in the pipe. So let's dive right in. First off, I'd love to give you a quick update on my writing progress. So as last time, I will have it somewhere here, I think. Here, my writing progress. I'm at about 80% for Project Rings. Now, I've got to say this month hasn't been ideal for writing, and I guess it's another reason I have this channel, is to show any aspiring writer out there what it actually means to write with a full-time job and raising a family. So I've only added a couple of chapters this month, and it's been a slow one for me. Completely, I guess, my own fault. We went away with the family on holiday, but also I switched jobs in between and didn't actually have a computer for a while, so things have been up in the air, floating around. That is the life of a part-time author trying to, I guess, do this thing as a career in the long run. So yeah, but I am at 80%. I'm looking to finish the novel in the next couple of weeks and get that off to the editor, who has slowly started chipping away at it on his end. So very excited to get that project going, and actually I'm very pumped for the next thing I'm going to write. I've got the idea brewing in my head, and it really plays around with the theme of today in the terms of why we write. Well, more specifically, why I write. What inspired me to write, and what I'm fascinated about. The themes I try and explore in my books, and sort of where I land in terms of what I'm trying to explore. Overall, in most of my work, I am very fascinated by morality. I am fascinated by what makes right and what makes wrong, and I guess the vast and the massive grey area in between. For me, it's very fascinating to explore these themes through writing. And I had a discussion with someone the other day. I wonder if it has something to do with my Christian upbringing. I live my life by a set of rules, according to biblical principles. But outside of that, if I was to, not live a moral life, what would that look like? That theme has fascinated me quite a bit. And so through my writing, I actually explore those themes, and usually I add in a bit of warfare and put it into an interesting universe with interesting characters and things like that. So that's always been the fascination for me, is morality. What is right? What is wrong? The other thing I'm always very inspired about is writing about warfare. Now, warfare obviously and morality go hand in hand, war crimes and what do people do in very stressful situations. But aside from that, I think warfare is often portrayed very untruthfully. It has to be done well and truthfully, in my opinion. And I've seen a lot of movies do it really well. Saving Private Ryan, When We Were Soldiers, Gladiator 1, The King is a recent example of that. I think that it does do it justice. However, I've seen it done pretty poorly as well. Now, I won't name and shame movies here, but I'm sure you can get the picture. There's some real corny movies out there that treat warfare not the way it should be treated. And it almost glorifies it and makes it sound real pretty, when in reality, warfare, the more you learn about it, the more brutal it gets. So I think for me, it's always been a real sort of inspiration to try and portray what warfare is really like in my books, through the different themes and sometimes in different universes. Obviously, the big series I have writing at the moment is set in a sci-fi universe, and so incorporating sort of reality of war and brutality in a sci-fi universe, which can often be quite fluffy and things. I'm excluding Dune and things like that from this, but there are some real fluffy examples. As an example, Star Wars and things like that, which is a bit more clean sci-fi. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey so far, and I've really enjoyed it. But those are sort of the overarching themes as to why I write and the themes I usually explore within my books. Why do these things specifically interest me? Well, I guess for me, it was growing up, I used to always play with, toy guns, and then that transitioned into video games. As I grew older, though, these fascinations went into the history of war and how far back we can pull this, and how long have we been doing this to each other. And as it turns out, we've been doing it for thousands and thousands of years. I recently began reading a book of Kings and Thrones, I believe is what it's called, and it portrays just the forming of medieval Europe and the brutality involved with the various people persecuting each other. And it really does does a great sort of broad-based storytelling of how both the Muslim nations were formed, the Christian nations were formed, right through the Crusades and everything as such. So I'm busy reading that alongside another book, which I'll tell you a bit about later. That just showed me that we as the human race somehow still default to warfare. Even in the modern age, we have so many conflicts, open conflicts going on around the world right now, which is terribly sad. But in essence, for me, writing about these things, I think, is a fascination, and from a, not to get too deep, but from a fiction author's perspective, is a good way for me to explore these deeper, almost darker themes within my worlds, which I think, again, ties in quite well to the morality aspect of it. Because when people are put in extreme situations, it's important that the author writes and treats their people honestly. What would people do when they are put in this situation? How would they react? Who would they go to? Would they kill this person? Would they not kill this person? Would they do the thing that's objectively bad or do the thing that's objectively right? What is right in that scenario? If you had the upbringing that a specific person had, would you still act that way? So these themes are the things that really excite me when I write, and all my stories, I try and actually add that into more and lesser degree. So the next bit of writing I'm looking to do after this first novella is something really, really almost to the extreme side of that. And I think it's sort of, and it works in another fascination of mine, personal finance. So it actually incorporates a bit of that as well with the modern world and a bit of intrigue and things like that. So I won't spoil it here, but again, it really asks these questions around morality and what is good and what is right, and are we content with what we have? Why are we not content with what we have? What is happiness? So all these deeper sort of questions, I think I'm trying my best to explore in a way that's organic and makes for an interesting story. Well, on a way lighter note, what's happening to me personally? As I mentioned before, I moved job, went back to an older employer of mine, and I'm really enjoying the challenge that brings, but it does mean a longer commute, and so I've been getting a lot more reading and listening done. It does, however, mean that I need to find creative ways to work in writing, which is, again, like I mentioned before, the challenge of being a part-time author and not doing this full-time. So yeah, look forward to the challenge of that and seeing where that goes. I've actually put down the history book that I mentioned before, and I am reading Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. If you know anything about his work, it is very, very grim and dark, and again, it explores a lot of these themes that I'm quite interested in. But yeah, Blood Meridian has been a bit of a roller coaster, and even for me, there are some really, really grim themes in that book. So I'm about 60% through that, so I look forward to my review. I'll give you the rundown on what I think of the overall book when I get to it. So make sure you follow me on Goodreads if you want to see what I have to say about that. Then we've adopted a beautiful little tabby cat. Her name is Nala, named by the kids, of course. I'll put a picture on screen of her right here somewhere. So she's been adopted and put into our beautiful family. So very excited to have met her and introduce her to the world. Last but definitely not least, thank you so much for sticking around. As always, I really appreciate your support and just giving me a view, a thumbs up, and a like, as they all say on the YouTube sphere. I will be, as promised, dropping the third novella in the Galaxis Chronicles series on the 15th of this month, so look out for that. I'll catch you in the next one. Have a great month. Bye-bye.